Welcome. I want to welcome all of our members and guests tonight. Do we have any guests in the house tonight? Scott and April James from Clinton, Tennessee, if you'll just give us a wave so we can welcome you. Thank you for being here. Do we have any new pilots or new ratings tonight? New or new to you balloons? Any ballooning in the community? All right, we're going to move right on to our presentations then. We're going to bring up Kim Vesely. She's with the Rio Rancho Public Schools, and she's going to give us an update on the area of Westside and Unser and what's happening. Let's welcome Kim.
How many of you have been around for a whole long time and remember when we used to go out to 15th at Rainbow and this was the catchphrase? By the year 2000, this is all going to... Okay, by the year 2000, this is all going to be houses. Remember that? I see some waves. Okay, well, here to tell you, it didn't happen, as we all know, but it's coming. And if you look at those pictures, and all of those pictures of all these places that you're probably pretty familiar with, there are houses either coming or already there that didn't used to be there before. So we're going to talk a little bit today about upcoming development in some of the areas where we fly frequently. And these are some of those areas. Now you may ask, why am I doing this? We have a couple, we being Rio Rancho Public Schools, who I work for in my real job, has a couple of big construction projects in the area, one of which most of you have probably already seen because it's very, very close to our Unser site. So just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what's coming over the next couple of years. And this isn't necessarily comprehensive, but again, it's just kind of the areas where we kind of fly around. And then at the end, I'll talk a little bit about balloon operations on our school campuses, which will be a nice segue, I think, into a little bit of what Sam is talking about. So onward we go. This area here is called Unser Gateway. And it's called that because I'm trying to sit here and point and stay behind the podium, which is not going to work very well, probably, right? Okay. Well, we'll not do that. All of those little circles there that you see on that map are kind of landmarks that you're familiar with. Some of them are elementary schools. Can you all kind of see the type on there, or is it too tiny? Some of those are existing schools. You can probably see the West Side launch site there. It's kind of over on looking at that right over in there. Thank you. That's our existing launch site. And then the next circle to the west of that is a construction project that we have going on right now. We'll talk about in a minute. And then there's another little circle that's a little bit further west, which we're eventually going to build a high school on that site. Years away yet, we don't have the funding for it yet, but it's out there off of Rainbow, and as that area starts to develop and we start to build all this stuff and some of these other things come in, you'll see a lot of, that will spur additional development in the area. This is the area we're talking about. The development is called Los Diamantes, and you can see that dashed line there that is West Side Boulevard. The red areas kind of around that are what's already developed. You can see a little tiny yellow rectangle where our launch site is. And then there's a shaded area. There's another little larger rectangle, which is the school I mentioned, the elementary school. And then there's a shaded kind of a triangular area that is going to be a 450 home housing development. And it's coming pretty quickly. So there's a lot of things that are about to pop there. About a year ago, we met with the city, we the school district, the city, the developers, all got together, approved a master plan. The development of the school was one key part of it. Of course, it's the first piece that you're seeing, but you're also going to see a lot of construction. This area here is proposed roadways. One of the first roadways you're going to see construction on is West Side, going on from Unser and going out west up through that Los Diamantes development. That also involves utility work that's going to be going in. And the holdup with it has been acquiring the right-of-way. They're in the process of doing that. But once that's complete, you're going to see that road start going in pretty quickly. And as we all know, that's a big chase road that we all love. Fortunately, there's a few ways around that, as you know, to kind of get around that. But that's coming quite soon. You know, I would say probably in the next 6 months, you know, depending on whether there's any snafus with that. You also see some other things, some of these roads that are in blue here, that are also going to eventually be connectors. So that's kind of gives you an idea of what that development looks like. This map, it shows utilities. And the utilities involved, there's city utilities, but there's also flood control, SCAFCA, which is the Southern Sandoval County Regional Flood Control Authority. I'm forgetting something in there, but it's the flood control guys. And they are going to have projects going in up there as well. So this whole area, there are 3 or 4 separate entities that are working on utilities and roads up there. And this kind of gives you an idea of what the Los Diamantes is going to look like once it goes in. You can see the elementary school there. Just west of that is the 450 homes that I mentioned. And then up to the north, there's a proposed business park up there. So this is going to be quite a large development. And like I said, once this goes in, you'll probably start seeing other things go in around that as the utilities and the roads and everything go in. You know, a lot of times people will wait for that to go out and do development. The elementary school we're building, let's talk about that a minute. That's Joe Harris Elementary, named after the Sandoval County Sheriff's deputy who lost his life about 10 years ago during a stakeout. Got killed by the guy he was staking out. Terrific guy, a great friend of schools. Which is why we named the school after him. That funny little triangular graphic there kind of was my attempt to show what direction the school's going to face. It's going to kind of face to the southwest will be the front of the school. It's going to sit triangularly on that site. Now, you all remember that as the motocross track. You know, those 2 motocross tracks there, they aren't there anymore, have you noticed? Yeah, we've plowed all that up. The motocross people are not happy with us. And that's going to be where the school is going to be, and that's what it's going to look like when it gets done. It'll be quite a large facility. I went too fast there. You know, 80,000 square foot building housing approximately 800 students. In other words, about the size of our existing elementary schools. It's laid out very much like Maggie Cordova, you know, for all of you that have flown over that. And it's coming in the summer of 2020. Now, here's our plea, and that is, we've got, that site is now fenced. Please don't land inside the fence. And that applies to the other construction project we're going to talk about too. We, Rio Rancho Public Schools, do not control that site. It's controlled by the contractor. We own the land under it, but the contractor controls the site. And in construction sites, there are all kinds of things that can puncture tires and skewer little people's hands, and you know those little flags they put up that say where they're going to put stuff, and You know, you don't want to mess with the little flags because then they get mad because then they don't know where they're going to put stuff. So please don't land in there. And it's not a case where you can, we'll call Kimmy, because I don't have access to the site either. The contractor controls it. If you land in there during the week, there's people working on the site. And I can understand why you would want to land in there, because it's a nice, big, great place to lay your balloon down. And a couple of people already have, on a couple occasions when pieces of that fence were down. Yeah, and I get it, I really do, but please don't do that. If you do it during the week, you can go to the trailer on site. Your crew should do that. Talk to the project superintendent or the foreman, whoever's the head guy on site at that point, and have them escort you in. But on weekends, that's probably not an option. So there's plenty of space around there. You can land somewhere else. You know, it's not as great a place to lay your balloon down, I get it, but anyway, that's the deal with that. So that's kind of what's coming up in Unser Gateway. Now let's go to our other launch site. Saw a nice ad, thing. Quad A's holding their event up on that little yellow oval there, which is our launch site over Northern and Broadmoor up in that area. Well, those little circles are either existing or upcoming developments that are going to go in up in that area. Some of it you've already seen, especially around those three circles that are right together at the bottom. The middle one, Solcito, has been developing pretty rapidly. There's another one that'll eventually come into the west of that, and then up to the north of that, right where our launch site is, there's another one coming. Now over on the other side, out to the east, is High Range. Idalia and Loma, Colorado, and you'll notice we have another school site up there that's broken ground and is coming in. At which point, when they told me where that was, I'm like, but you're taking one of my favorite places to land, because I have actually landed there a couple of times. Probably some of you have too. But we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second. This is the development plan for that whole area between Idalia and Montezuma. And Montezuma is up where that little development, that long skinny development is, up off of Broadmoor, that's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, but not for much longer. So it kind of shows that whole area there in the master plan. The area where our launch site is, you can see, is encircled in blue dashed lines there, and it's going to be called Stonegate. It's not imminent, but it's coming. There has been a plan that's filed with the city. It's been there for some time, but it's serious enough that somebody's actually got the land and platted it, and as soon as the market calls for it, they will probably go ahead and start developing that. And again, you see High Range over there, and the area around that pink square is our new school. And to the west of that, found out when we were doing the groundbreaking for that, eventually there's going to be a YMCA over there. So there's going to be a lot of cool stuff coming in over there. This map is tilted sideways. North is that way. But again, it kind of shows in a little bit more detail what's proposed and platted in there. And the blue square is our existing launch site up there. So, okay. The Shining Stars preschool, which we're building, cute little kid helped us break ground for that. Going to be a very nice facility, not 87,000 square feet. I didn't change that. It's going to be a little bit smaller than that. And it's, again, completion will be in the summer of 2020. Okay, let's talk about going out a little bit further north, Cleveland Heights. How many of you landed around Cleveland High School somewhere? Just about everybody. How many of you know there's a whole bunch of houses going in there? Uh-huh. And they're building there right now. They're done platting and they're starting to build. Plenty of area to land around that, but I just thought I would bring that up. Let me just kind of talk briefly a little bit about our campuses. We have 19, and it will be 20 once we complete Joe Harris, and a little bit about what's expected if you land on or around or take off on or around one of our schools, and I'll try to make this really quick. We are balloon friendly, we love you. The parents and kids love you, the teachers love you, we love you. But we do have a few simple rules for your own safety and to make sure, as you know, campus security is a big deal now. Last year before Fiesta, we actually drew up a series of protocols, which those of you that have been in Fiesta have probably seen those. I just want to go over a couple of the major ones pretty quickly. Generally, if school's not in session, you can access you can launch or land on a school as long as you can do so without damaging fields or property. Most of the gates are going to be locked on the weekends, so keep that in mind. But you can launch and land out of parking lots. That's all fine. Again, as in all balloon operations, we will be very angry with you if you mess with our locks and our fences. Just saying. Please do not drive on grassed areas. You can, if the gate is open, you can access that. You can drive around the perimeter. You know, we're worried, we've got sprinklers out there. So the grass is wet a lot of the time. Please don't mess with that. Alcohol, tobacco, including e-cigarettes, and weapons of any kind, including lookalikes, are not permitted at any time. Okay, so now you're saying, okay, what about that Leatherman I have in my balloon basket, right? Or in your chase truck? Keep it under cover. What about the mimosas you have in the cooler? Keep it under cover. Okay, please don't do that. And as always, as on any property, you know, pilots and crews are responsible for any damage caused by the operation and retrieval of the balloon. If you land on a campus during the school day, well, first of all, if you're going to launch or something and it's during the school day, please ask the principal. Get permission to do that. If you're going there to do a tether or some activity connected with the school, you probably have that anyway. If you land there and school is in session, here's what you should do. If you're the pilot, you should stay with the balloon. You're big. Somebody has probably seen you land. And if the schools are following the protocol we've set up, they will send somebody out to the balloon so that you will have an escort. With balloons, we're not really worried about guys with guns and stuff like that. You're probably not terrorists, right? But that's the kind of protocols that we have. Anymore, our campuses are increasingly fenced and secure, and the doors, have to buzz your way in anymore, and pretty much have to show a driver's license and go through a background check when you come into a school anymore. It's just the era we live in. So what these protocols do is recognize that you and your crew are probably not a threat. And we want to facilitate you being able to get your balloon out as easily as we can. So pilot passengers stay with the balloon. The crew must check in at the school office as any visitor would. And our staff, they're probably not going to make you go through present your driver's license. They're not going to want to do that with 5 or 8 crew people. But they will give you an escort to go in and get the balloon. And they will tell you how to get the chase vehicle in there. And how to do that. Only 1 vehicle per balloon, please. If you've got 2 or 3, the other guys can park in the parking lot. So it's really just common sense stuff. If it's on the weekend, school's not in session. You may launch. As I already said, you can launch from land on areas that are not gated, where access is not restricted. That's fine. Please be aware that most of our nice-looking fields that you really want to go lay out on, you can't get to because they're gated, okay? Ditto for landing. If you land in there, your crew's probably going to have to walk you out. If it's an emergency, there's a number you can call, 962-1109. And by an emergency does not mean, I landed there, could you please come open the gate? Sorry. But I will tell you, I also have a set of gate keys. But please don't call me either. I love y'all, but, If there is a field that, where the gate is open, we don't have any problem with you going in there and launching if you want to, but again, don't drive on the grass. You can kind of back your vehicle up to it, type of thing. But please don't drive on the grass. There's sprinklers in there, and especially if the grass is wet, that really makes a mess of things when that happens. So that is all I have. Do you have any questions real quick? Yes, sir.
We're soon going to leave Westside and Unser.
We are.
Is the area around the proposed business park a reasonable next step?
Okay, that's a very good question. Here's what I understand. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. The question was, we're soon going to lose Westside and Unser, which I think we've all known for a while. Is the area where that business park is going to be a reasonable next location? That up there on the top of that area you're talking about up there? I'll tell you what my understanding is, and that is that the first priorities are the school and the residential, and the business park may lag a little behind that. That said, I don't know how long we're going to have there, and that's a question I can try to get an answer to. See if we've got 3 years. See if we've got 3 years. Yeah, it's that is going to develop, and the issue here is not just the business park itself, but all of the utilities that are going to come through there, the roads and the utilities, which will precede any construction of buildings. And so that's a very good question. I don't know how fast that piece of it's coming. I think it's behind the rest, but how far behind, I don't know. Yes, sir.
To follow up more on Ray's concern, we are in talks with Rio.
Okay, let me try to summarize what Zarek said there, and that is that Quad A is in talks with the city of Rio Rancho to try to get another launch site, the idea is to get a permanent site. Of course, that's been a tall order in the past, but we're hopeful. So. Okay, anything else while we're switching things over? Yes, Al. Is that area above or below ground utilities? Most utilities in Rio Rancho are below ground, as you know, and I have not heard anything different about this. Certainly nobody, I would be very surprised to see actual above ground power lines go in there, but that's another good question to ask. Anything else? Okay, I'm going to get out of the way and let Sam talk. Sam, where'd you go?
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Kim. Next, we're going to bring up Sam Parks. He is part of the City of Albuquerque Land Task Force that's looking, did I say it right? Okay. That's looking in the City of Albuquerque for a balloon-friendly area. So, Sam.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, these two presentations certainly go hand in hand because what goes up, of course, has got to come back down. And as we see the urban development within Albuquerque, it's quite apparent that landing sites are going away, as we've seen, and also launch sites that we just referenced. Excuse me, but thank you to people like Councilor Don Harris on the City Council, who has decided that something needs to be done about this. And Don is chairing the city balloon landing task force with Paul Smith. And there's a lot of people on that. I'm just going to kind of give you an outline of what's being done on this particular task force. The task force is made up of city councilors, county commissioners, state representatives. Dick Rice is on it as well, fellow board member. So AIBF is certainly represented quite well on the task force, and it meets probably twice, 3, maybe 4 times a quarter. And the goal, of course, is to not necessarily within the Rio Rancho area, but certainly within the city limits, and I'll point out some reference points here on the map here in a moment, in an effort to try to open up some additional landing sites. The task force goal, of course, is to try to work with present businesses, developers, property owners, and work on some mechanisms by which that their land can either be developed as balloon friendly or perhaps even purchased by the city of Albuquerque to remain open. I think, and this happened certainly long before I arrived here, but the Renaissance Center that y'all remember is being purchased or at least left open. I think Walmart was planning to build there, and an effort was put together to try to maybe change the direction of that development. But we've seen since then the Renaissance Center has actually developed quite extensively. And so it's important, particularly for Balloon Fiesta, to have landing sites for our 500, 550, 575, 600. Where are we going to stop? We've got to have room for those balloons to land. And the city is well aware of the fact that our numbers at AIBF is a direct relationship with where they can land. So as I said, what goes up certainly has to come back down. So they understand the importance for this because of the economic engine that Balloon Fiesta is to the city of Albuquerque and the state of New Mexico. So one of the things that has been done, and it may be very difficult to see here. This is it's just a Google Earth image. And what you're seeing up here is the city GIS department went to work. And from some information that Paul Smith and I provided them, they were able to go throughout the typical landing areas for Balloon Fiesta balloons, and that's predominantly down through the valley. Yes, out into the river valley, but not so much across the river into Rio Rancho. But we put it up into 4 different quadrants. Quadrant number 1, of course, would be most likely where you would land, and then 2, 3, and 4. And they looked at each one of those quadrants, and with a landing perimeter specs of about 300 by 300, they were able to look at all the GIS maps within the metro area and come up with some suitable landing sites. Now, suitable on the map may not be suitable in real life, so we recognize that. And so they deemed some that were green, that met all of our criteria. Then yellow was, it could possibly work. So where are we going with this? So there's hundreds of these. Ray, how many hundred? There's probably close to 500 different locations. Now that might surprise you. To have that urban sprawl that we all are aware of, to still have potentially 500 landing sites. Now, we all know that that's all dependent on how fast the winds are and whether or not there's a power line that runs through that site, you name it. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to split these GIS selected sites up into groups, and the AIBF safety officers are going to actually go put boots on the ground. And that means that they're going to go look at each one of these sites to determine whether it's ranked in from 1 to 4, and 1 being the best. And we may even eliminate a lot of these. But the goal is that to eventually bring back to the city of Albuquerque landing sites that we at AIBF deem appropriate. So then you might ask, well, what are you going to do with it next? The city, and as well as this task force committees, they've studied a lot of different ways in which that we can, or they can, and I say they, the city of Albuquerque, can encourage those property owners to remain balloon landing friendly. It could involve tax incentives, it could be property tax rebates or credits, or in the form of a developer who's looking to put up a new building down at the Renaissance Center. If we could possibly change the development overlay plan for the city of Albuquerque that says something along the lines that, okay, you can have light poles, obviously, but they should be more on the perimeter of the property or maybe to one side to where you have more landing opportunities. Whereas the trees right now, they may have an ordinance or a city planning ordinance that says you got to have so many trees per square foot. They're looking at changing some of that to reduce some of that infrastructure obstacles that we may see. Now, it's a tall order, there's no doubt about it. But that's one of the things that they're looking at doing, because they understand that as landing sites go away, then that just creates more of a problem for ballooning, particularly for Balloon Fiesta. Now, and Kim just so accurately described how we're losing landing sites in Rio Rancho, so you can imagine what it's like here in the valley of Albuquerque. And so that's ongoing. One of the things, though, that you can actually help with, and Derek, if I could get you to come up, and I'd like you to zoom in on Vista Del Norte. And we've all landed there before, right? Okay. There is a tract of land that is just south of Vista Del Norte, and you've flown over, I'm sure, before. You recognize it's a lot of open pits. I think Lafarge has rock quarry. Vulcan, thank you, excuse me. Yeah, Vulcan. It's about 90 acres. And one of the things, and by the way, it's just literally across the street from Vista Del Norte. So as you can imagine, it's in the flight zone for Balloon Fiesta. All right, north of Sam's Club and Costco, for those that live in that area. Yep. So one of the things that the city is considering, and this is where we need your help, is actually buying that land. It's approximately 90 acres and putting approximately 30 soccer fields in. Now, so those of you that have children that play soccer, or those of you that have friends or family members, kids that play soccer, tell them that this would be a much better option instead of driving all the way to Bernalillo to play soccer. Because can you imagine having 30 different soccer fields there and then connecting all the way up to Balloon Fiesta Park with all the soccer fields that we have here? Now the city of Albuquerque can start to host national soccer tournaments because you've got the facilities to host that many people playing soccer. So that's just one of the ideas that the city is considering now, is that could potentially be turned into Vista Del Norte extra large, because it's directly in line with that. It's right across the street, and that could potentially open up a lot of landing sites for those flights that go down through the valley. So if you have anybody that plays soccer, or kids that are in these leagues, talk it up about how that could benefit the soccer, I guess, leagues. Instead of having them up in Bernalillo, have it right here in Albuquerque where they could keep all the games here. So the city is encouraged at this. There's a lot of things that would have to be worked out regarding purchasing the land. As you can imagine, it's not going to be a cheap purchase, nor is it going to be cheap to fill in those large holes and make soccer fields out of it. So it is something that the city is serious about. They understand the development. They understand the economic impact that this balloon event has to this community. So they know that this is something that needs to be addressed. So that's just some of the things that Dick and the rest of the committee members are working on to try to open up more landing sites here in the valley area. So anyway, we just thought this would be a good kind of segue, I guess, from Kim's presentation, that even though the development is happening throughout Albuquerque and Rio Rancho, at least there's an effort going on to help preserve some of these landing sites. Yes, Dick. Thank you. Yes. One other thing that is on the radar for the city of Albuquerque, and this is something that some recent news on this, Murphy's Mule Barn on 2nd Street. It's on the market for, I think, $2.5 million for approximately 15 acres. Pretty pricey. Yeah. You want to take up a collection while we're all here? If you were reading the newspaper or watching the news back when the legislators were in session up in Santa Fe, you saw that the state actually passed a bill that provided $7.5 million to the city of Albuquerque, and it was stipulated for improving access to Balloon Fiesta Park. And so one of the things that we at Balloon Fiesta think, and the city is starting to agree, that it makes sense to purchase that piece of property for two reasons. Number one, to benefit the landing task force to preserve that landing site, because a lot of people land there. Because Larry Mary with the landowners group, you are provided the keys every year. When people land there, we have the keys to let them out. So we know that people land there on a routine basis. But in addition to preserving it for landing sites, the city is actually thinking it's a good place to park cars. So we could possibly park cars there and shuttle people in from the west side who are coming into Balloon Fiesta Park. So that's something that we're considering, whether it's a lease to buy option, whether it's just a right-out purchase. We're not sure. That's still in the development. But it is something that we're keeping an eye on, because we would really like to have that 15-acre tract, because it's a good proximity to the park. Thanks, Dick, for that reminder. Any additional questions? Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Sam. If we could get our